Who would like to begin?
Delson is my name. Good morning, teacher.
Good morning.
I wonder, is there any way that we can turn those desires, like for progress, which is unwholesome, into wholesome desire?
Yeah. So this is one of the common occurrences when someone is on the doing the practice and on the path, is that there are certain expectations that one has of oneself, and then expectations of what might happen based on what one has heard about or read, and so on and so forth. So there is chanda, which is cultivated intention, and it is a wholesome desire in the sense that one wants to excel on the path, and one wants to attain awakening, and one wants to have that experience. But once you have that cultivated desire or intention, you have to let go and do the work, which means that allow the mind to fully soak in the different experiences of the jhanas while not holding onto the jhanas themselves, meaning you want to have attention towards your object of meditation, whether that is metta or compassion or equanimity or joy or just quiet mind. And as you get deeper, when you do start to experience these expectations or you're looking for certain things, consider that to be a distraction. Anytime you're trying to look for something, anytime you're trying to look for, is it going to happen this way, or I can't find what has been discussed in the suttas in this particular way. Everything flows quite naturally. So you will experience the different factors. You will experience the different feelings from the jhanas, as long as you allow the mind to naturally unfold. So it's important when you have those expectations and when you start to see that the mind is looking for something when it's not there and is essentially obsessed by the desire for progress, consider that to be a hindrance of craving. And what do you do with the hindrance? You recognize it, you come back to your mind and body, releasing your awareness from it. You relax the tension and that craving associated with that hindrance. Come back to the smile, and then come back to your object of meditation and continue on that way. So it's a continual practice of recognizing, of detecting anytime you see that the mind is looking for something when it's not there, or having certain expectations, let go of that.
Thank you.
Hi, Delson.
Hello.
Yeah, thank you first for the guide in the last 10 days. Yeah, it's been very benefiting. My question here today is about like the 37 prerequisites to awakening. There is this 4 bases of the power and the 5 power of the faculties. I would like to understand more, or can you like help to elaborate a bit for my understanding or our understanding of how does it ties into our practice, or what should we be able to observe or see them? They are constituting, or they're giving some effects in terms of that elements to the awakening. Yeah, during our practice, I mean.
I'll
Thank you.
definitely talk about that so long as you guys can help me with some of the words, because there's so many different factors in the 37 requisites that one tends to sometimes forget, or forget to remember what they are, although they are applied when you're doing the practice. So when we talk about the four bases of power, what are the four bases of power?
My information, or actually knowledge, not yet understanding there, right, is the intention,
Yeah.
mind, the energy, and the discrimination factor. I'm not too sure about like how that discriminate. They interpret it as investigation or discrimination. So it's more like investigation, right?
Right.
But this is the four.
You have chanda, you have virya, you have chitta, and you have investigation or discrimination as panya, is it?
They have it as vimansa.
Vimansa,
Oh.
yeah. So vimansa is really in the investigative principle. So it's another synonym for Dhamma vichaya, for example. So we're looking at what that means, the four bases of power, the idipadas, right? They're basically the requirements for development of psychic powers, or the psychic development of the mind. And so how does that work? First, you need the cultivated intention, which is the chanda. You see, the thing about psychic powers is that they can cause a lot of conceit, they can cause a lot of arrogance, and they can cause a lot of delusion, which is why you need to start with the cultivated intention, the wholesome desire, the chanda, which is that I am developing this mind for the psychic faculties, or for psychic progress, for the purposes of awakening, not for the purposes of delighting in these powers and therefore showing off and increasing that arrogance and increasing that conceit, that sense of I am. Then what's the next one? Virya. It's, I think, effort. Yeah.
Effort, no energy, right? Vinya.
Which is the same as saying having application, which is you're applying the mind towards having these psychic abilities. So the way that would work is you use the fourth jhana as the base for these psychic abilities. And once you have the intention of what it is that you want to develop, you make an active effort. But the active effort is not something that you push for. The intention is your object, which is, this is the psychic power I want to understand. For example, when you have threefold knowledge, when you're using the four jhana as a base, you're now using the practice of looking back into your past lives. You're looking back into the lives of other beings and how they got there, and you're looking at the mind and the destruction of the taints. So this is application in the form of making an effort, of exercising the mind. So effort in that sense is not exertion where you are pushing, but it's just the general understanding of making the effort. In the same way as when you're meditating, you are making the effort to stay on the object of meditation, whether it's the Brahma Viharas or the breath or whatever it might be. The third one is chitta, which can be understood as consciousness or cognition, or it could be understood as mind itself. So you need to have the ability to understand your mindset. The way I translate chitta is mindset, which is a collection of thoughts, a collection of similar thoughts. And so that mindset has to be one that is oriented towards the development of the psychic faculties. So it is the cultivated intention, the chanda, has now deepened into the layer of consciousness, the layer of mindset, where one has essentially used the collectedness around that intention of developing the psychic faculties. And then the intention is rooted with the psychic power that you want. For example, somebody wants to know clairvoyance or have clairaudience. So you focus on, let's say, the ear faculty and notice the distant sounds that are present in the ear faculty. And then you start to notice certain other sounds that are there. Or with the eyes, in terms of not really opening your eyes, but in the mind's eye, being able to practice the ability of seeing beyond just your physical eyes. So you're using the mindset for this, you're using consciousness for this. And then finally is Dhamma Vichaya, or as you mentioned, Vimansa, which is essentially the same thing. It's a synonym for the same word. And that means that you're investigating how this is arising. You're investigating and looking at, analyzing and reflecting on, for example, using clairaudience, discriminating between the different celestial sounds, discriminating between the different sounds that are arising in general, discriminating the different psychic faculties that do start to get developed and that do start to arise. So insofar as I understand the basis for psychic development, this is how I see it.
So actually, if we do not have that intention of like developing psychic powers, this is not that something that we should be like putting effort or not like putting attention or putting like any of the direction in that area. And then how it becomes like the prerequisites then, I was trying to understand, because first now I have a better understanding. I didn't know that it is relating to psychic power, right? But as now that it is more relating to psychic power, which is not our practice or like our intention of the practice, as far as I understand, right? So it's not relating to it, but it is part of the prerequisites. So I'm not too sure how we should address to that, or what kind of attitude was put towards these four bases then.
What is the highest psychic power? The topmost psychic power in all of the 80 fields?
Oh, it's the freedom of the mind. It's the total freedom of the mind.
So you're using it with the intention to have freedom of the mind for the destruction of the asavas, the destruction of the taints.
Okay.
Right.
And, the strength there, how do we in terms of identifying this, or like to observe the strength that is in the faculties? In what ways are we able to give a better way of seeing that in our practice? That is.
So now we're talking about the 5 faculties and the 5 powers, right? The 5 faculties and the 5
powers. The 5 powers there, yeah. Is relating to the 5 faculties, right? It's not relating to the 4 bases. So no. It is too. I was not too sure. That's why I'm asking. Yeah. So it's relating to the power of the faculties. So it is. Yeah, this is also my next question. My question.
The way to understand that is you have the faculties, which are the mental faculties, which are like 6 sense spaces, the sense organs through which you experience feeling. So faculties are, you could say, physical components of the mind through which you experience the 5 powers. So you have the faculty for conviction, the faculty for faith in the Dhamma, in the Buddha, in the Sangha, faith for the principles of the Dhamma, and so on and so forth. And this combats doubt. So that energy of conviction is what replaces doubt. It sheds a light on doubt and dissipates it. Then you have mindfulness or observation. That observation is mindfulness in the sense you have the faculty for mindfulness through attention. You're using attention to be able to notice what is going on. You're paying attention. When you have mindfulness, that energy of mindfulness, that power of mindfulness, It dissipates heedlessness, dissipates carelessness. It dissipates the ability to not see what is going on in reality. When you have energy or effort or application, that is virya, right? That is the effective application. So you have the faculty to make the intention to have that application to what it is that you are doing. For example, letting go of the unwholesome states of mind, preventing the unwholesome states of mind, letting them go, and then cultivating the enlightenment factors, cultivating the wholesome states of mind, and then maintaining them. That's really what it is in terms of effort. In the same way, you have the faculty of doing that, that whenever you do the 6-hour process, you are using energy, you are using that effort. So that process of the 6 hours is the power, the energy, or the process of the effort, of the energy. Then you have, what's the next one? We got 2 more.
Please help me.
Is that concentration and wisdom?
Yes, that's right. So samadhi and panya. So samadhi is obviously related to having a mind that is collected, a mind that is unified around its object. So anytime you do the 6-hour process, the result of that is a collected mind. So you have the faculty to do that. You have the faculty to be in jhana through your mind. And that process of samadhi, that process of being collected, occurs through that faculty of samadhi. And so, as I mentioned, energy or effort. So first I mentioned to you, conviction is a way of dispelling doubt. Faith is a way of dispelling doubt. The energy is a way of dispelling laziness. The mindfulness is a way of dispelling heedlessness or carelessness. Collectedness is a way of dispelling a distracted mind, a mind that is restless, a mind that goes from here to there, to there, to there. It is collecting the mind so that it's unified around its object of meditation. So whenever you have a collected mind, it is the faculty of that collected mind, but the energy, the effort that you make to collect the mind is the process, it's the power. It's the active effort to dispel a mind that is distracted, to basically counterbalance that with collectedness. And finally, we have panya, which is wisdom or insight or intelligence. It's that supramundane intelligence, which is the fruit of the practice. In other words, it's the wisdom of noticing whenever a mind is distracted or undistracted. It's the wisdom or knowledge, the bare awareness of what is present. But on a supramundane level, it is the insight that arises through the Four Noble Truths. So the faculty for wisdom is basically rooted in the mind, in its ability to see the Four Noble Truths. The seeing of the Four Noble Truths, the dispelling of ignorance, because insight is what dispels ignorance, is the process, the fifth power or the fifth energy. So faculties are stationary. They're basically parts of the mind. Think of it as components of the mind. Powers are active. They are a moving part of the mind. So it's through these faculties that these processes arise.
So in fact, the whole process of the 6 hours, the mechanics is giving the strength to all these 5 faculties. That is what is called the strength, the power to have that 5 faculties work in the way of the way that it should, to give us the mindfulness, the quietness, the energy. And yeah, okay.
Yeah, and more.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes.
It's about counterbalancing the hindrances. So the hindrances,
Right.
the hindrance of laziness, the hindrance of restlessness, the hindrance of craving, the hindrance of sloth and torpor, all of those things, doubt, are also dealt with when you use these powers or you use these strengths or energies through those faculties. So we have a comment here which says the requisites of enlightenment, a manual by Venerable Ledi Sādhu, is a free download of the net. So if anyone is interested, they can take a look at that. It's in the chat.
Thank you, Delson. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Delson.
So
I have a question regarding applying the 6R into daily life. Like, I know that in daily life, in the practice, we're supposed to let go, of all the formation as much as possible. And also the desires to the desire for anything. At least we just have an incline, and then we let go of the desires, and then incline for the mind to unfold naturally. But in daily life, obviously when I have like a project or work, usually I have a desire for the project to be success.
yeah.
So it's a good way to apply harmonious lifestyle or harmonious way is just do the work with the best intentions, with the best wholesome intention as much as possible, and have that desire for it to success, but don't think about it too often or like on the repeat, kind of like that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the best way to phrase this question, but
Yeah. So desire, one has to understand that there's nothing inherently wrong with desire. What we're talking about is the craving, which is the obsession over something. Also, the discontentment of what arises, meaning craving is basically that craving in which one wants more of something rather than being content with what is being received in the moment. And then the flip side of that is aversion, where one doesn't want, is not happy with the present moment, present situation, present circumstances. So in the case of, as you mentioned, harmonious lifestyle or right livelihood or effective living, it's essential to see where your intention lies. So right intention is interspersed rather through right speech, right action, and right livelihood, right, or harmonious lifestyle. So your intention as the person who's doing the project is that there is success for the project. That would be considered to be a wholesome intention because it provides you happiness and it provides everybody else happiness. And you're doing your work so long as you're not trading in the 5 things you're not supposed to trade in, like so long as you're not building weapons, or so long as you're not building poisons or selling alcohol or meat or trading in humans and other beings and things like that. It's obviously just a project that will benefit you and your client, right? So there's a wholesome intention to get the job done. and you want the success of the project. That is a wholesome desire. That is chanda. You have understood what is the need of that project, what are the best possible outcome for that project, and you wish for that. There's nothing wrong with that. What one has to be mindful of is in the process of doing the project or committing and then making the different actions that you need to throughout the project, is that you stay mindful of the actions or the steps of those actions to the completion of that project. So the intention behind completing that project successfully is already within the mind. But the craving is where you actually are not paying attention to that present moment, where you have to be paying attention for that success of the project. For example, let's say one of the steps in the project is that you need to write out an Excel sheet, right? You have to draft an Excel sheet, just as an example. And that's just one of the action steps you have to take for that project. Now, for that project, you understand your right intention is it has to be successful. But are you committing to actually doing the Excel sheet? Or are you thinking about other things where you get bored, or you don't want to do it, or you get restless? So when you notice these things, you have to 6R those and stay with the intention of completing this task for the purpose of completing the project that's successful.
Thank you, Delson.
Hi, Delson, if I may ask another question about like in the sitting. There is some times that there is all of a sudden a blank out, like emptiness, like the mind is not like that your attention was there, but all of like a sudden that is kind of like between foggy and not foggy, but it's not foggy. It's like you lose part of the consciousness. What does that mean? Or is it sluggishness, or is that something? I just had one experience today like that, so I wasn't sure exactly what is that, like that empty lost part of partial unconscious. Like it's not that I am not aware, but it is not as clear as like at the earlier moment. So it's from one moment to another, it's not as clear. Like
Yeah.
so, if you may help me on that, please.
So you have to look at also the other aspects of the mind during that time. But here you're talking about where the mind was not clear. So that's a tendency towards sloth and torpor. So maybe the mind wasn't as active, but there was a certain level of unclarity in the mind. So when you notice that, what you have to do is you realize that the mind is starting to drift away from its object, actually, because it's not able to notice anymore your object of whatever Brahma Vihara it is that you might be looking at. So at that point, then you need to recognize that and let that go. So if you recognize that this mind is, let's say, a bit foggy or unclear, you let that go, use the 6Rs and come back. And then at that point, you need to add a little bit more energy and interest, which means it's like your focus, well, not focus, but you could call it focus, but it's more about your attention. It has become a little expand it. So you want to kind of hone in, so which means you put a little more effort, a little more energy towards whatever it is that you're observing, whatever it is that is the object of the meditation. So this is really getting closer to Sādhu and torpor. So for that, you need to use the enlightenment factors of energy, where you put a little more effort, interest, where you actually have some joy in there and enthusiasm. So that is done by putting more attention on the object, and that naturally will bring up that joy after you relax. And then investigation, which you already have done when you recognize that there was Sādhu and torpor, and the mindfulness to be able to notice that the mind is coming back to its object of meditation.
Hi, Delson.
Hello.
In one of the talks, you talked about having some sort of mindfulness even in one's sleeping, and it's almost having like a lucid dreaming. And I was wondering how one do that, to have that level of mindfulness even during sleeping.
Lots and lots and lots of practice.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a matter of being, first of all, if you can perfectly be mindful in your waking hours and really be mindful at everything that you're doing, be mindful of when there is craving present, aversion present or not, if any of the hindrances are present or not. It's all about exercising the mind, actually, because everything you do in terms of right effort is a continuous exercising of the mind. It's a continuous letting go of the formations and factors that cause one to be not mindful, that cause one to be careless, that cause one to become distracted. So every time you exercise the mind, you let go of those factors, and you're strengthening the factors where you can actually be mindful pretty much in every moment, and be mindful of what it is you're saying, what it is happening in the way of the senses, if there is craving present, if there is attention present, if there's personalizing present. All of these things, when you start to notice, your mindfulness becomes sharper and you're able to let that go. And then when it comes to sleep, you are mindful of how your posture is when you go to sleep. You're mindful of the level of deep relaxation that is occurring in the body. And you continue to do this, you continue to be mindful. And then, yes, there is what is known as lucid dreaming, where one is mindful or is aware that one is dreaming. This deepens into where you get into the much deeper levels of sleep, where you can actually be mindful of the delta waves, for example, which are associated with the deepest levels of sleep. And all it is this awareness that's there. So you could be aware of the mind having nothing there at all, because it is actually a deep level of nothing when you are in that deep sleep. At that level of deep sleep, what's happening is that the cells are becoming restored. The cells are healing. The mind is taking all, or the brain rather, is taking all of the things that has happened throughout the day and consolidating that into memory and all these other things. It is, but there is just this sense of blankness, this sense of nothingness, and it's just this lucidity. It's the same way you would experience the eighth jhana, where you have this sense of deep sleep, but there's still this awareness of that deep sleep. But there's nothing going on there. There's very little formations arising if at all, which you immediately let go of. In the same way, in deep sleep, you just notice these different processes that are happening in the mind and in the body when you are at that level of deep sleep. And it's just a matter of first committing to having as much mindfulness as you can have, committing to siksaring as much as you can whenever you notice craving, whenever you notice hindrances, so that you can exercise that muscle of mindfulness.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to ask another question regarding what you just described. It sounds a little bit to me like by letting go, we're turning off the electricity, or what I call it, the energy source of the body. Eventually, that we just turn it off while being completely aware of it.
Yeah. So when you're letting go of the different perceptions, the different grosser levels of perception that you experience in the first four jhanas, you're refining your perceptions. And what's happening is you are actually reducing activity in the mind. So the, as you said, electricity or the neurons, the neural activity that's happening starts to get less and less active. They don't fire as much. They don't activate as much. And then at a certain point, when you experience neither perception or non-perception, what is happening is that faculty of the mind or the brain which is able to perceive and recognize things, recognize patterns, recognize colors, recognize faces, recognize all of these different things which are rooted in the memory and learning and knowledge, starts to become quieter and quieter and quieter, which is why you have this neither perception or non-perception, which means there is a perception, meaning there is this awareness of something there, but there's not total perception of what it is that you're looking at. Like there could be disconnected images, there could be colors, there could be people, there could be just events that seem to not make any sense. The mind does all of these different things. Because of that filter of perceiving not being fully present, you can't really make complete sense of what it is. So instead of trying to make complete sense of what it is, because if you do that, you're no longer in either perception or non-perception. You let go of those things and continue to have the mind quiet down even further until all electrical activity that we know of completely shuts off. And that's where you have cessation of perception and feeling.
If I may, sorry, Tony, are you done, or can I? I just want to get thank you. A deeper understanding of what just brought up about like how the concepted things that was in our brain to be not working in the level of non-perception, neither perception or non-perception, is like the neurons are not connecting there. Like we're trying to slow down the whole neuron firing, and then they are at that point, it is not connecting one thing to another. That is how it is not able to perceive. But those things are still that particular like concept that or we call it consciousness, or what is already there, is are they still there, or like it's just that we don't want to pay and let go of it, but are they still there? This is also related maybe to the consciousness of like how it created the conditions for the materiality and mentality, right? So is that something that I can understand in that way, or?
Yeah, so the way you should try to look at it is in this way. So we're talking about where the neurons fire left in a specific part of the mind, which is related to perceiving, recognizing, memory, learning, and knowledge. Because perception is anya, right? Perception is essentially the recognition aspect of the mind. It's that part of the mind that knows that that color is green and that object I'm looking at is a tree, and those are leaves, and those are branches. All of these are rooted in certain parts of the mind, which are the memory banks. So that's where perception arises from, the recognizing of what it is. The same way when you have painful, pleasant, neither painful nor pleasant feeling, the knowing that that is pleasant, or the knowing that that is unpleasant, or the knowing that this is neutral, is that perception aspect. It's that aspect of the mind that recognizes. So what's happening in neither perception and non-perception is you're noticing formations come up. Those formations are karmic in nature, which means that they are arising because of internal content in the mind. These formations light up and then create a consciousness or activate a consciousness that then is experiencing the image or the color or whatever it is that you're experiencing in the way of your mind. So all of this is rooted in the formations related to feeling and perception. So those formations are basically being tranquilized at this level. Those formations that are mental formations. Mental formations meaning those that bring up feeling, that bring up either sensory experience or internal mental experience, and perception, which brings up the recognition of what is being experienced in the way of the senses or internally in the mind. So every time you're looking at it, or you have a sense of it, what is happening is the formations are arising. There is still awareness, so that activity of consciousness is still present in that you see it, it's there, it's being established in the mind, but that perception and feeling faculty of the mind is getting quieter and quieter. So you're like barely looking at it. You're barely glancing at what is arising, and you're letting it go. So it's coming back to, now if you want to use it in the context of dependent origination, you have a mental formation that arises in the mind because of internal content. Whatever is happening in the activity of the mind causes that formation to arise. It's a formation that activates a consciousness, which establishes in the mind and the body, but in this case, in the mentality. And in this case, in the factors of, or the faculties of feeling and perception. But it doesn't come to completion. It doesn't completely come to one's visual sense in the mind, because it's not as clear, because at that point, those parts of perception and feeling are actually becoming quieter and quieter and quieter. The moment you notice it and then your mind starts to gravitate towards it, you have come out of neither perception or non-perception. Instead, when you notice it, you completely let go of it, come back to the quiet mind where that perception is let go of and that feeling is let go of. So the more you're doing this, the more you're tranquilizing these mental formations at this level, you're getting closer and closer to the cessation of perception and feeling, which is the complete stopping of, or the stilling of those formations, those mental formations of feeling and perception. So instead of trying to look at what those are or trying to analyze what those things are, that's the step in the wrong direction. You're going one step below where you're actually now perceiving completely. Instead, you have to understand that what is happening is the mechanics of these formations just firing, and they're not completely being perceptible because the mind is not engaged in that way. Here, the mind's intention is to completely let go and come to the cessation, perception, and feeling. So instead of trying to recognize what that is, just allow it to be there, acknowledge it, let go and relax, let go and relax. The more you do this, you're exercising that part of the mind that continues to tranquilize the mental formations, eventually leading to the cessation of perception and feeling.
That is also the, in one of the sutra that is talking about the cessation of the contact. Is that contact there of that perception of that mind to perceive? Is that cessation of the contact there that I was asking on one of the other day was, I think now is that means that contact, that particular moment that mind is into that perception function. Before that, if that contact is ceased, then it does not connect it.
That's right.
Okay, so yes,
So
that
just,
a little bit.
yeah, just to clarify on that and just to expand on that a little bit.
Yes,
So the cessation
please.
of contact. So when you don't have contact, which is the stimulation of the internal contact in the mind or of the sensory, the six sense bases, there won't be feeling or perception. So which means that when you are also letting go of the feeling and perception, you're letting go of the contact. You're getting closer and closer to letting go and having the cessation of contact as well.
Thank you. Yeah, it helps a lot there for understanding. Thank you. Yeah.
Delson, on the day-to-day basis practice, if for certain time that we do lose the mindfulness to radiate, and it comes to a state that when I feel that there's no good feeling of the Brahma Vihara coming out, and due to day-to-day work, what are the remedies to it other than smiling and thinking of wholesome things?
Yeah, I wasn't able to clearly hear what you said. Can you repeat that, please?
Due to day-to-day work, some of the time I lose the mindfulness to radiate the Brahma Vihara, and when that occurs, sometimes it takes a bit of effort to smile is easy, but that that wholesome and nice, friendly feeling or Brahma Vihara coming out, and it takes time to stand out again. So what are the remedies to that for an easy way to get it back?
Yeah. So in your daily activities or whatever you're doing, you can also infuse Brahma Viharas, you can infuse loving kindness, you can infuse compassion, and so on. But the moment you start to do that, what you're doing is meditating, no longer completely just applying mindfulness. You have to understand that mindfulness is more about having the awareness of whether there is craving, tension, or aversion present, if there's any personalizing going on. So mindfulness in daily activities is all about being aware and having the presence of mind to notice where your body is, what your body is doing, to notice what it is happening, what is happening in the way of your feelings internally and externally. That can mean sensory experiences as well as mental experiences. You're noticing what is happening in the way of your mind as well as your thoughts, but more importantly, the phenomena that is arising around you as well. So there are different ways to recognize what's happening in the present moment. So insofar as mindfulness is concerned, what you're doing is tethering the mind to the present moment and seeing how things arise and pass away, how things in the mind arise and pass away, how sensations in the body arise and pass away, how phenomena around you arise and pass away. And then letting go anytime the mind holds on to something, anytime the mind holds on with craving, with aversion, or with personalizing or identifying with that phenomenon. What you're referring to is using the Brahma Vihara as an object of meditation in daily life. So that can be done, but not at the expense of having mindfulness of what it is that you're doing. So these are two different things that you do, the way I understand it. If you want to just infuse Brahma Viharas in whatever it is you're doing, you can have the right intention. And remember, right intention is letting go of the distractions. It always boils down to the 6R practice, because you're continually letting go of the factors in the mind, the experiences in the mind that prevent you from experiencing the Brahma Viharas. So that can be restlessness, that can be tension, that can be craving, that can be sloth and torpor, that can be doubt, whatever it is, you have to keep recognizing it. So the moment you recognize it, you are using mindfulness through that practice of meditation, through that practice. And then the intention of having the Brahma Vihara has to be there. But if it's not present, don't beat yourself up for it. If it's not present, if the mind is just neutral, if the mind is just balanced, that's more than enough. Just allow that to be there. And when the Brahma Vihara naturally arises, take that as your object. In trying to initiate something, what you're causing yourself to do is create more craving. So trying to create and pushing too hard will also result in restlessness. So whatever it is that you're doing, if you're doing it 100%, you're utilizing the ability to pay attention to what it is you're doing, which means you're utilizing mindfulness to the extent that you're recognizing when you get distracted, and you're utilizing attention rooted in reality when you're staying present with what is arising right now in the moment. Those are more important elements. The Brahma Viharas, in terms of how you interact with people, can always change depending upon the situation. So if you notice, for example, you are in a debate or an argument, and the mind starts to have ill will towards the person or towards the situation, when you recognize that, you're using mindfulness. When you come back, relax the mind, you're letting go. You're using right intention to let go. And by not having ill will or the thoughts of harming another, you also have the right intention. And then bringing up at that point, making the effort to let go of the unwholesome thoughts and bring up equanimity or bring up loving kindness with full attention that you are intending not to aggravate the situation, but to calm the situation down. So that's just one example in the case of somebody who has an argument. When it comes to things where you have just general ill will, or you find that there's general discomfort in what it is you're doing because you're bored, or because mind wants to do something else, or because it's distracting. If you utilize the 6R process to let that go and then come back with equanimity with what it is that you're doing, that's more than enough. So you can use the smile as you mentioned, as a way of bringing up the joy, bringing up the loving kindness. But the Brahma Viharas are just an object. They're just something for you to tether the mind to the present moment. What is in your mind? What is better? That you become engaged in Brahma Viharas while you have to do some work at the office, or that you get your job done at the office with joy and with pleasure in staying with attention towards that. Because if you're just going to be infusing Brahma Viharas, your mind is no longer staying with what it is it needs to do. But if you just infuse it with the gratitude of doing this, the enjoyment of doing this, then you are actually using the Brahma Viharas in a different way, not just using it as an object of meditation, but bringing it into your actions, bringing it into your speech. So every time you have kind words, every time you try to de-escalate a situation, you're using right speech and right action, and you are utilizing one of the Brahma Viharas to do that. So it's not just about having the mindfulness and awareness of it. It's about actuating it. It's about, putting it into effort through your actions and words.
Thank you, teacher.
I think somebody raised their hand earlier. They had a question. Or no?
Hi, Delson. Just building on that last answer that you've given, and there must be a way of almost measuring one's mindfulness as well. I'm thinking that the more you are mindful of your actions and paying attention to what it is that you're doing, you're also strengthening your mindfulness. And that kind of links back to the earlier answer that you've given. The more you practice, and that mindfulness one can carry even into one's sleep. Is that the right understanding?
Yes, that's right. So it is about, as I said, exercising the ability to be mindful. It's the ability to always recognize what is happening here right now, instead of allowing the mind to become distracted by thoughts about comparing oneself to another, or by thoughts about the future, which creates anxiety, thoughts about the past, which create regret or remorse or nostalgia and all kinds of things. You see, the thing is, whether you're thinking about the past or you're thinking about the future, you're still in the present. So if you have the presence of mind to notice that the mind is thinking about the future or thinking about the past, and letting that go, you're coming back to the present. So all you have right now is now. So you have to allow your awareness to always rest in what it is happening right now, even if the mind, you notice, is going into the future or the past, even if the mind is comparing oneself to another in the present. All of these are related to thoughts of craving and restlessness, related to thoughts of sloth and torpor or doubt. So anytime there's activity in the mind beyond what is happening now, beyond where the attention is, that's a distraction, that's restlessness, and you have to let that go. And what happens is, when you let that go and you have that experience of relaxing the mind and body, what happens is there's this complete clarity of mind. There's a very spacious, open awareness of mind where nothing is there. There are no conditions present. That is the mundane nibbana, where the mind is unburdened by any thoughts of greed, by any thoughts of hatred, by any thoughts of craving and aversion, by any thoughts of personalizing, identifying, or delusion. It's a mind that is completely unconditioned. So if you're able to come back to that awareness where mind is continually having no thoughts in it, because any thoughts that are related to oneself identifies the mind with something. Related to the senses creates craving and aversion. If you continually do the 6R process in relaxing, you're coming back to the unconditioned. You're coming back to the mind that is nibbana, a mind that is taking nibbana as an object for that minute amount of time, whatever it might be. Eventually, that time expands and expands and expands and expands. And in doing so, you're weakening the fetters, you're weakening the hindrances, you're weakening the different unwholesome thoughts and desires and craving and all of those things through non-attention to them. You're not activating them through your attention. And when you do that, they weaken and they're let go of and they fade away completely without remainder. And what's left is that unconditioned mind completely. So every time you do the 6R process, you're exercising your mindfulness. You're exercising the ability to stay with an object, whether it's the Brahma Viharas or whatever it might be. But more importantly, every time you're letting go in the 6R process, you're expanding your ability to experience Nibbana more and more, and it becomes clearer and clearer.
Thank you.
We'll wait for a few more seconds, see if anybody has questions. Okay, I think you can start sharing some merit now.
May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sādhu, Sādhu, Sādhu.
So
Thank
before
you.
we leave, thank you all. Before we leave, I just want to thank everybody else on this retreat, and more importantly, the people who were able to make this possible. I mean, here I am in terms of helping you guys and guiding, but this Zoom retreat wouldn't be possible because of all of the technical aspects that are related to it, which I neither have the time or inclination for. So the people who are behind this, specifically Kuhn and Kim, who manages everything, and everybody else, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kuhn.
Thank you, Kuan. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, teacher Delson.
Thank you, Kin, and thank you very much, Delson. Yeah.
Thank you, Delson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, everyone.